Havlicek steals it. Havlicek stole the ball. Down goes Frazier. Down goes Frazier. Down goes Frazier.
United to Amici powers in.
Won their 6th NBA championship.
Gibson, swing. This is going to be a home run. Unbelievable. Don't believe what I just saw.
Hello, I'm Chris Fowler, and welcome to Sports Century. The Chicago Bears once carried the flame of their big-shouldered, blue-collar town in the form of a welder's torch. They came straight at you, wrote Jim Murray, and crippled you and sent flowers later. Then, after winning their 8th NFL title in 1963, the Bears slipped deep into mediocrity. Enter Buddy Ryan in 1978, a defensive coordinator as brilliant as a diamond and just as hard, armed with a secret weapon that came to be called the 46 defense.
And look at these fans at Soldier Field. They're on their feet for the defense.
Our whole deal was to attack, 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 and that's the way Buddy had us trained.
He didn't soft sell it. You want to win the football game, you got a chance to eliminate him, eliminate him.
You're thinking, I can hit harder. In fact, the last guy hit, he shouldn't have gotten up. It was those type of feelings that Buddy was able to bring to this team.
Mark Wilson still down on the turf, has not moved.
He didn't ever try to hurt anybody, but he wanted you to take players out. If you could take them out clean, yeah, take them out.
That was the thing about Buddy Ryan. He not only wanted to beat you, he wanted to punish you. Then he wanted to laugh at you.
Todd Bell, Washington playoff game, 1984. First play of the second quarter, he almost killed Joe Washington.
Theismann again, big rush on him. Gets it away, Washington.
Calvin Muhammad was so scared that he caught a ball and ran a few steps and dropped it before somebody could even hit him. One thing about the 46, it definitely created an intimidation factor.
Named for the number worn by hard-hitting safety Doug Plank, who became a 4th linebacker, the 46 defense was primarily used in third down situations. But after 8 future Pro Bowlers were acquired between 1979 and 1984, Ryan's 46 evolved into the Bears' basic weapon.
The 46 defense, its main purpose was to get to the quarterback. And let's see how good the second-team quarterback is.
The general philosophy of the 46 defense was 11 men on offense, 11 men on defense. When you count the quarterback, someone's going to come free.
It messes with your blocking scheme as far as, okay, who do you pick up, which way do you slide? Is this guy the rush guy? Is that guy the rush guy?
Here's what it is. See, they put the 3 linemen right in here, cover both guards in the center. Then they have their middle linebacker, 50, Singletary here, who's free to go up and down. They bring their strong safety, play him here as a weak backer. They put 2 backers over the tight end.
What this defense caused you to do was almost every time you saw it, you had to get out of certain plays and get into other plays.
The 3 guys in the middle, it started with them. They had to apply pressure. You can't apply pressure, then you can't play the 46 defense.
The biggest factor is you just weren't going to be able to run against it.
Oh, this is the toughest team in the NFL against the run.
You had to throw because they had too many people right at the line of scrimmage.
Guess what? We have literally 7 great pass rushers.
I'm in trouble.
So it was very difficult to pass protect them and still put enough receivers out into their coverage.
The 46 defense was unique in that regard, in that it puts a lot of pressure on the secondary. The corners are typically going to be the men on the island.
You'd like to think that the corners were the ones that you could expose, but there's only one problem with that. It's really tough to throw at corners when you're on your back.
20 sacks in 2 weeks, that's great. I mean, a lot of quarterbacks are sitting home wondering, oh man, I'm next.
People would spend hours preparing for the 46, and yet Buddy might not play the 46 but about 10 times a game and be just as effective.
Buddy's true genius is the offensive side of the game as well, if not better than, the defensive side. We got a sheet every week with what we called AFC, automatic front and coverage. And if the call came in, we didn't know what the defense was until that offense lined up.
Every time they line up, it could be a blitz, or it could be a zone, they could play man. They got very sophisticated on what they could do with that basic front, and it really was tough to read it.
I saw a bunch of guys on the other side of the ball. They didn't know what was going on and everything. When they were shifting, we were shifting. When they moved, we moved.
We could go from a normal four-man front on a blitz into a 46 look. Looks like a Chinese fire drill. You had to have some real veteran ball players who were smart and working together.
You have to have defensive ends that can drop into the zone, cover like Richard did. You got to have linebackers that can play the run, they can play the pass, they can drop back in zone, which we had that luxury with Singletary and Wilbur and myself.
Mike Singletary was a player coach on the field. Right when you would, think you got him figured out, he would yell shift, and then you would make an audible, and Mike would audible.
It's really disheartening as an offense to walk up to the line of scrimmage, and he's yelling out the play. If you're an offensive lineman or a running back, and you're getting the ball, you're like, well, man, what do we have to do against these guys?
You thought they were going to put pressure on you, and all of a sudden they drop 7 or 8 into coverage. Now you're rushing like crazy to get back, and you're standing there, but there's nowhere to go.
I had to use every bit of knowledge and experience and wisdom I had to come up with game plans to attack this defense. It's really the most singular innovation in defensive football in the last 20 years.
Buddy's a different kind of individual, a genius when it comes to defense. There's no question about that, and he gets the most out of his players, but he crosses the line with some players.
After playing guard at Oklahoma State, Buddy Ryan rose through the high school and college coaching ranks until he was hired in 1968 as a defensive line coach for the Jets, with whom he won a Super Bowl ring in his first season. After 7 more years with New York, Ryan spent 2 campaigns with the Vikings, helping them win the 1976 NFC title. Then he brought his attack mentality to Chicago.
He was a sergeant in the Korean War at age 19, so he was a leader of men, and guess what? We all realized that the common good was better than, a singular good.
It was duty, it's boot camp. It wasn't going to be his fault that the team lost because somebody was tired or somebody didn't know what they were doing.
Teacher, motivator, technician, he has the ability to do it all. A lot of people understand the X's and the O's, but he also understands people.
I always went for 2 things, intelligence and toughness, because a dumb guy will get you beat, and a guy that's a coward will get you beat. So I eliminated all those things.
First thing he told me is rookies get you beat. I do not play with rookies. So I had to sit there and sit there and sit there.
Even future Hall of Fame linebacker Mike Singletary wasn't exempt from Ryan's law.
This is my first start. I was all excited about the game. I called my mom, called my sister, said, hey, you guys got to come.
He had flown his family all in from Houston to see him play. And we go out on the field, and they run a no huddle, and he calls timeout. Wasted timeout in the first place. I benched him.
Go over there and sit down. Don't get up until I tell you. Sat down the rest of the game. It was the most humiliated I've been in my life as a player.
Once you got the system down, he'd back away. But until that point, man, it can be brutal at times.
I went to Oklahoma State to watch the basketball team with Henry Iba, who was one of the great coaches, and he could get on them for mistakes and all that, and then bring them right back with praise, and that's kind of the way I did it.
With Buddy Ryan, there were those guys that he loved like sons, and then there were those that he loathed. He had to let Lenny Walterscheid go to make room for me, who was one of his sons.
Buddy walked into the room and walked right up to us and said, I had to cut a hell of a kid to keep your ass on this team. I didn't want to, and I hope you prove me wrong, but I'll tell you this, if you don't, I'll be one sad son of a bitch for keeping you. Anybody who ever knew or worked with Buddy Ryan had a love-hate relationship with him. He doesn't care what you think about him. It doesn't matter. Buddy is focused on doing what Buddy wants to do, and he'll say or do anything at a given time.
When we would draft a player, Buddy would have a complaint about him to his sources, and they would get in the paper Fridge is too fat, Singletary's too short, Otis Wilson is too dumb.
At times I want to beat him up, but after sitting down with him, understanding his philosophy, knowing what kind of impact I could make in that defense if I knew my responsibilities, made me work harder and made me appreciate his defensive genius.
We had just lost the game. And Buddy began to go around the room. And he went down the line, and it was not one guy, including myself, that stepped up to say, you know what, Coach, that was my fault. Buddy cut off the projector, and he said, you know what, we have a lot of great talent in this room, but it's gonna go to waste. Until we can own our mistakes, until we can talk about them, we've got nothing. Next week, he began to ask the same people, same questions. And guys were saying, oh, that was me, Coach. I just did a stupid thing. And I could see a smile on Buddy's face. I knew that for the first time, that he realized something special was about to happen.
The 1981 season was going down the hill, and we realized something was going to happen at the end of the season. But we were giving as much effort as we could and playing pretty well for our defensive coaches, specifically Buddy Ryan as a coordinator.
I was pretty sure that we were going to have a coaching change, and I went to Alan Page and said we should write a letter to George Halas.
It wasn't going to benefit the organization to get rid of the entire coaching staff. The defense was performing well, so the letter got written.
Basically said that we thought that our defensive coaching staff had done a great job.
Like he goes to bat for us, we went to bat for him. I mean, we got together and said, we can't lose this guy.
George Halas showed up at the Great Lakes Naval Training Center on a very snowy day.
And said, I've been here in Chicago, worried about this football team for 60 years, and I have never heard or seen or witnessed a group of people that so loved and cared about their coaches.
It was Christmas Eve. They called a press conference to say that Buddy Ryan was going to stay. And that made it difficult for whoever was going to be the head coach right off the bat.
4 weeks later, George Halas hired former Bears tight end Mike Ditka as his new head coach.
I wouldn't have took the job the way he took it. But, you know, he wanted the job bad, so he took it.
Probably a little animosity when I came in there because I think Buddy thought he was the next heir apparent, and I don't blame him. But, you know, I think things happen for reasons.
This was very intentional by George Halas. He used to promote friction among his staff. So to hire Ryan and then bring in Ditka was just a continuation of what Halas grew up doing.
Buddy knew what he wanted. The sign that sat above his desk said, if you ain't the lead dog, the scenery never changes. And Buddy wanted to be that lead dog.
Really, the first year, we go up to see Buddy, and I said, what's wrong? He goes, Ditka. He wants me to run the flex defense like they did down in Dallas. I said, what'd you tell him? He goes, I told him that he's the head coach. He can run whatever defense he wants, because I'll be down on my farm in Kentucky.
Generally, a head coach speak, everybody kind of moves. In this case, it wasn't like that. Head coach spoke, defensive coach had something to say.
As a defensive player, you get caught in the middle. My rookie year in '84, Mike wanted me to go in and cover a certain receiver from the Vikings. And Buddy wanted to change things. Mike would send me in. Next play, Buddy would pull me out. Next play, Mike would send me back in. Then Buddy would send me back out. The next day at the meeting, Buddy turns the film off and he says, son, I don't care if Jesus Christ himself sent you in a game. If I tell you to sit, if I tell you to play, you follow what I do.
Buddy kind of had a divide and conquer attitude. It was us against our opponent, us against the offense, us against the head coach. We were going to win the Super Bowl in spite of Coach Ditka.
I used to tell Jim Finks, the general manager, he could charge to watch practice. It was that good. So it's always the job of the defense to give the offense a picture and vice versa of teams that are coming up. Well, whenever the Bears would play defense against the Bears offense, they would jump into the 46.
We had to explain to the defense and the Buddy that we weren't playing the Bears that year. We had no, I looked at the schedule. They weren't on the schedule. So therefore, let's play against Detroit and Green Bay.
During many of the practices, if there was some penetration on the defense into the backfield, Mike Ditka might say something like,
the next time that guy comes through the line, cut his ass, which basically means dive at his knees. As soon as Buddy would hear that, he would say, okay, we're sending everybody on the next play.
Despite the feud, the Bears won their first 12 games in 1985. But when their celebrated defense faltered during a Monday night game in Miami, giving up 31 points by halftime, the antagonism between Ryan and Ditka reached a new height.
Mike told him to put in a nickel package right before half, and he stayed with the 4-3. And Marino took him right down the field and scored. And Ditka chased him into the locker room, and the players had to separate him.
Mike didn't agree with the way we were covering some of their receivers and told Buddy so, and Buddy basically told him to mind his own business in pretty graphic terms, and Mike wasn't going to take any of that.
Buddy and I had a few words. Buddy's his own man. I don't think he goes to anybody else's drum. He wouldn't certainly go to mine.
We didn't have any relationship, but I mean, I coach a defense. That's what George Hallis hired me to do, and I did it my way.
In an abstract way, we fed off that because we realized if we're giving up 30 points a game, Buddy can't walk tall, and we didn't want that to happen. We wanted Buddy to walk 6'8".
The part that hurt Ditka the most was that a lot of those defensive players almost looked at Buddy Ryan as the head coach.
Knowing how thick-skinned Coach Ditka was, knowing how thick-skinned Buddy was, just didn't think about it. Sometimes their opinions get in the way, but we're talented enough, and we can continue to go forward.
Mike told us, look, I want my offense to win 4 or 5 games for me. My defense has to win the season.
I'm not a fool. I know the strength of our football team was our defense.
Operating with the seek and destroy intensity of a Delta force, the 46 was the scourge of the NFL in 1985. Ryan's troops created 54 turnovers, made 64 sacks, and scored 5 touchdowns on their own.
Turnovers were really the heart of the Chicago Bears defense. I mean, that was their intent, not only with their scheme, but also with their physical play.
Number one thing with defense is turnovers, get the ball back for the offense so they can score.
The signature moment for me personally was the Dallas Cowboys.
We were pissed off for the fact that who named them America's team. I'm like, where did that come from? So we wanted to show people that we were America's team.
They came to Texas Stadium, man, and they handed it to us.
It was the only time in my career when I can say my objective coming away from the center was to get rid of the ball as quickly as I could. When you have that, you have a great environment for turnovers.
And the score now is the Chicago defense 14, the Cowboys nothing.
That defense really catered to our personalities.
The defense would challenge each other in the locker room. You'd hear somebody go, okay, I got $100 for a fumble recovery. All of a sudden, there's pretty good dinners, I would put it, being awarded for players that didn't make it through a game.
There was a bounty on Eric for $6,000. The stakes was pretty high. I said if it was any higher, I'd go to the hotel and get him myself, but he won't even make it to the stadium.
Otis and Wilbert start barking like dogs. They got our fans doing it before they caught on at the dog pound in Cleveland.
The Chicago media went nuts, all of Chicago went nuts, but they also became a national story, and to me that's the more interesting piece, and I think a lot of that, it gets back to that defense.
The Junkyard Dogs are here.
With the excitement floating around Chicago and everybody's talking about the Super Bowl, we went out on a limb, we do the Super Bowl shuffle.
Fensick, was, going out with hot girls and had hairspray commercials and all that other stuff, and everybody knows what Fridge became that year.
You got to keep a lot of Coke in the refrigerator.
The defense loved him being in the goal line offense. It was just part of the action.
We are watching a folk hero being made.
My notoriety was on offense, and I took to it. We enjoyed it, and it was fun, but I had more fun on defense.
The 15-1 Bears rolled through the playoffs without yielding a point. But prior to meeting the Patriots in Super Bowl 20, rumors swirled about Ryan's future.
He pulled me over the first day that we were down in New Orleans and told me he had accepted the job with Philadelphia.
It was the night before the Super Bowl. We were in our meeting room, and Buddy starts crying.
I told him they'd always be my heroes, and I meant that.
I was too immature to receive it. You know, Buddy at that time was the love of my life. So to me, it was like betrayal. You're leaving?
Buddy walked out of the room, and really there wasn't a dry eye in the place. And McMichael didn't really care about Buddy like I do. But McMichael stood up and threw a chair and it impaled into the chalkboard.
After seeing that, Dan Hampton got the old projector, jumps up and smashes it with one hammer blow. Boom! Well, the meeting's over.
It really was a profound moment in the sense that we only got one more chance to play for this guy. Let's make it right.
Raymond Berry and Mike Ditka's teams are on the field for Super Bowl 20.
The first play, they come out of the huddle. Tony Eason walks up to the line of scrimmage. I gotta take my glasses off of this. His eyes are like this, looking at us at the line of scrimmage, and it's gonna be a pass. So he should be looking at downfield at the secondary, but he's looking at us with wide eyes like a deer caught in the headlights. I knew we won the game right there.
Dominance. They put the fear of God into Tony Eason, and that was the end of the game.
Led by Richard Dent, who was awarded the game's MVP, the Bears won 46-10. They forced 6 turnovers and held New England to the second lowest offensive output in Super Bowl history, 123 yards. The defensive players paid their respects in a time-honored way.
How often do you see the defensive coordinator and head coach both being carried off the field after a win?
It was never a problem. I really didn't know it until I saw the pictures after the fact.
Ditka knew what he had working for him, so with all of those clashes and those egos going at each other, there was a grudging respect too. I think more so Ditka for Buddy than Buddy for Mike.
It was a symbiotic relationship. They really needed each other. They didn't win before and they didn't win afterwards.
Although in 1986, the Bears defense under Vince Tobin established a record for stinginess in a 16-game season, allowing an average of less than 12 points, the players missed the heat generated by their former leader.
Buddy Ryan has an attack defense. Vince Tobin's defense was totally the opposite. Wasn't allowing us to, really be ourselves. A lot of guys wouldn't say nothing, but I'm saying it now. We didn't like it.
Once you've had a taste of something like the 46 defense that's so out of the box, so non-traditional, so creative, nothing else ever measures up to that again. Because you know that it's something very difficult to do, and you had the personnel to make it work, and you had the coach to lead it.
It was a very unique time in all of our lives, and something I think we'll all cherish for the rest of our lives.
Despite adjustments made by opposing offenses, Buddy Ryan continued to effectively run the 46 defense in Philadelphia, Houston, and Arizona. But after 7 seasons as a head coach, his record hovered at 500, and he never won another postseason game. The 46 lived on at Tennessee, where Jeff Fisher, one of Ryan's disciples, ran variations